NJ.com and the Heldridge Hotel. Welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insider Brian Fonseca. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant. A win. We're here to talk about a win, a victorious football team. I got a lot of emails that started, look, a win is a win, okay? Win's a win. That's the theme of this show. A win is a win, baby. Just win. Put it on a t-shirt. William Tate, president of Rutgers University. Al Davis, everyone who loves winning is coming to our podcast today. Brian, do you love winning?
I love winning, but you know what's more important than winning this week? It was not losing to the worst team in the Big Ten. So how about we print a t-shirt that said, didn't lose, baby.
Just don't lose. That doesn't have the same ring. Nike's not going to sell sneakers based on that. Just don't lose. Yeah, but I see your point. Certainly, as important as the win was, it was as important not to lose that game. More important not to lose that game. I know that doesn't make any sense. They're the same things, Politi, but it does. There's a lot of pressure. That was a loss. If we were discussing a loss, the number of things that loss would have opened up. I mean, the can of worms that would have been just all over the place with that loss. Now we can avoid that. Avoid the talk of 0-9, avoid the doomsday discussion about the worst team in the Big Ten, avoid, just this season spiraling out of control stuff. The narrative is shifted. And I think that's one of the reasons, certainly, that you saw the emotion from Greg Schiano after the game. I get it. Like, he was excited. He was happy for his team, but the man felt the pressure and in another way just knew what was going on behind the scenes with this team.
Yes, on the scale of the must win to can't lose, which I know we joke about a lot, this was firmly in the can't lose territory because you beat Purdue and nobody's giving you a back pat. Everyone is telling you rightfully that you should beat Purdue. And everyone is nitpicking about how they won the game. But to your point, if they lose that game, which would have been really fun to the same night a night later, Brian Kelly gets fired at LSU because he has 3 losses against top 10 teams. Then the firestorm of LSU is doing it. Penn State is doing it. Why isn't Rutgers doing it? Greg Schiano is not the guy. That would be our entire conversation. Those conversations are already happening after every game this season. People are having a referendum on the Rutgers football state of the program after every game this season. If they lost to Purdue, the next 18 to 24 months would be that. At least now, for the next couple weeks, we could talk about football and we could talk about the way Rutgers won that game and how much they can fix it before Illinois. And there's still some semblance of a season and some semblance of something to play for, right? Like the bowl game in theory is still in play. The season did not go completely off the rails, right? And exactly to your point, I think that's exactly why Greg, along with supposedly spending more time preparing than any other week in his football career, which I believe that. I legitimately believe that. I could see why Greg reacted the way he did, and I see the way the players reacted the way they did. Ethan's sprinting over to him, hugging him, telling him he loves him, and intrepid sideline reporter Fuchs's microphone is in the area, so you could hear him say to each other, it took every last second, didn't it? Just like I told you. They had long meetings this week, and I just think it's a relief for everyone that the season, I know they talk about going 1-0 every week. They got a huge 1-0 this week because the season didn't go off the rails, and it easily could have, because we talk about it in our little bubble. If Rutgers loses to Purdue, that escapes the ball.
I know. Rutgers fans talk like LSU fans, spend like Louisiana Community College fans. That's the best part about covering this team. It's we got to get rid of Greg Schiano. And they're like, what are the NIL donations? Oh, that's right. Nobody gives anything. Well, let's do the same thing LSU does. I love there's a quote about LSU, and we'll talk about Brian Kelly later because I think it's fascinating. One of the boosters, you can always find the money. And Ross Dellinger's story. Oh, you always find money. You do? Oh, that's news up here. But getting back to your point about the emotion and about it was genuine. I mean, you can't fake that. He dropped to one knee. He shook both fists and looked to the sky. Got a bear hug by one of his twin sons. No one can figure out which one, which is another hilarious, Rutgers moment. Hugged Joe Susan, a longtime assistant, and then Ethan comes over and Ethan's quotes to you about this, or to you guys who were at the game. again, like very genuine about how he felt about winning for the coach too. Like in the office for a long time, I've never met a coach who cared more about players than he does. Clearly, like if you thought that the 4-game losing streak was good to have him lose this team, once again, no evidence of that happening. This is something that has not happened. As when Greg Shannon has been coach of this team, he manages to keep them even when things are going in the wrong direction. Once again, it wasn't a perfect performance. Certainly, we'll talk about that next. But he still has firm control over this program. I think that's what that win means, what that effort means, and what that victory, what the celebration, what the emotions mean.
Because again, if they didn't get it, I think all the things you just said had a real chance. I was trying to get to that point with my last question to Greg. I think it's fair to wonder if they don't win that game after KJ Duff has 241 receiving yards, after they have their best defensive performance in the Big Ten this season. If they lose that game to that team, I do think that there is a chance that guys throw in the towel and wonder what's the point anymore with 4 games left. You're 0-5 in the Big Ten. You are going to be seen as the worst team in the Big Ten. You have a real chance of going 0-4 in the Big Ten since the Chris Ash era. Like a lot of grim things were staring you down the barrel. And they could still go 1-8 in the Big Ten. That's not unfathomable. There's not a good chance it'll happen. There's a decent chance it'll happen, right? There's no game left on the schedule like a Purdue where you think, all right,
they should be underdogs in 3 of them, clear underdogs in 3 of them, and it'll be a toss-up in the 4th. So, yeah, absolutely. Good. Yeah.
Right. But you're not going over, which I think there's a huge difference between 1-8 and 0-9. I just think that's the truth. Yeah. So I think things are not completely back on the rails. No one is thinking, all right, all the things we were complaining about before this week are over because we beat Purdue, but they did not just completely crumble, and we were not going to spend the next month just dead man walking to the end of the season and then having a huge offseason of questions, right? Unless now we can still get there if they just get blown out the last 4 games.
But let's worry about that another day. All right, and this game, and I think this is one of the examples of what I thought was going to happen this year. Like I thought Rutgers was going to have high level talent above some of the teams they played, and this is one of those games where that high level talent won the game for Rutgers. And we can't say enough about the way KJ Duff performed in this game, one of the best performances ever by a Rutgers skill player. And this is a program that, has had some pretty good ones. Kenny Britt didn't have a day like that. Leonte Carew didn't have a day. I had days close to that, but didn't have a day like that. The only player in program history with more yards in the game, Taekwon Underwood, who had a cup of coffee in the pros. This is another pro level receiver. And, for me, what makes it so impressive, it wasn't just that he continues to get every jump ball against smaller cornerbacks, and you saw it again in this game, but he broke free and was wide open on a 78-yard play. You've got the clip of just how freaking open he was on this play. I mean, that's the stuff you expect from DT Sheffield, right? I look at if you're watching it on YouTube, he is catching the ball on the 32. The nearest cornerback is at the hash marks on the 39. Not good. Not where you want to be when you got a guy beat. So clearly a breakdown. I get it. A breakdown in the Purdue defense as well. But still, just a really heads up, great play. He carried them the way Antoine Raymond carried them in this game. He had the one fumble, which could have been devastating, but he recovered from it. It was just, again, was the dominant running back. And we're not saying enough about Ethan Kaliakmanis' game. When you throw for 350 yards, you can only complete 19 passes. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just another really probably his best performance, one of his best performances in his career, certainly. The season, leadership you're seeing from him. The offense wasn't perfect, but those 3 guys certainly carried this team.
Yes. And KJ might have had the best receiver performance, at least yardage wise, of all of them, because Taekwon Underwood did that against Buffalo. Yeah. One could argue that this Purdue team is Mac-esque, but it is a Big Ten team on paper. So we'll give credit for that. And then Mark Harrison, who surpassed for 2nd place, he did against Cincinnati in garbage time of a game that wasn't really competitive. So KJ Duff did this in a game they had to win, and he carried them to that win. They would not win that game without KJ Duff. For him, I think this is a moment where the work he's done all season, he's been the most consistent guy. We talk about Ian Strong, rightfully so, as the more dominant guy, but KJ Duff has been there every week, contributing every week. Hasn't had the gaudy numbers, but he's chipped in. He scored touchdowns. He leads the team in touchdowns with 5, and he just keeps on contributing. And this was kind of his breakout moment where now you have 2 elite receivers in Ian Strong and KJ Duff, and when they're both out on the field playing the way they are, you have, again, 2 of the best receivers, maybe the best receiver tandem in the Big Ten. So I think this is a good breakout game for him. He just did it in so many different ways. They had no hope of guarding him. They had a 6'1" cornerback on him, which you got to pray for the kid that he just had no hope. If the ball is being thrown in the general vicinity over his head, KJ Duff is going to get it. And I don't have the screenshot from that touchdown, but to your point about Ethan, he was getting pressured on that play, and he threw that pass off of 1 foot, and he hit KJ on a dime on his shoulder. So he overcame some pressure. He was pressured on 14 dropbacks, got sacked 5 times.
Yeah.
The offensive line struggled. Jashawn Benjamin, who had a good game, he struggled really badly on pass protection. His first drive, where he has a lot of action, he moves them up 46 yards on 4 carries. He is just slicing and dicing and moving them down the field, and then all that progress gets wiped away because he whiffs completely on a pass block. Ethan gets sacked for 7 yards, and then the drive stalls, right? So that's the thing. Like, you got to make, for all the good they did, in some areas they washed it away in others. But I think Ethan, KJ, hard to ask them to do better than they did. And when you have a receiver that is as dominant as that, you're always going to have a chance in a game.
Right. Defensively, mixed bag, I think is the best way to put it. You've saw some progress, and we talked about, judging this defense on a curve, so to speak. When you have 5 stops and a 6-drive stretch, when you're forcing punts, which we haven't seen a lot of, but, and this is a pretty big but, they're just things that are continuing to happen defensively, where guys are just left wide open, where you just can't explain. It's just things that are just inexcusable for a high school football team, much less a college football team. I think about the first touchdown for Purdue when, is this the one? Where he's all alone and essentially standing in the end zone by himself. Which one is this? No, this is the second one, I think. Again, no one covers the running back coming out of the backfield, right? I mean, that's all.
This is the first one. So they roll out to the right. Rutgers, the secondary gets kind of lost on where to be, and he has a wide open receiver walk into the end zone. The second touchdown, he is so open. The quarterback is throwing the ball here. Jacoby Henderson, who identified that the receiver was wide open before the snap, did not move over. The receiver's flailing his arms. He's so open, begging to pass the ball. And I don't have the frame here, but when he catches the ball, there's no defender within 5 yards of him. And then the third touchdown, the ball's in the air. The Purdue receiver. This is the opposite of the KJ Duff play, where there's not a Rutgers receiver within 10 yards of this guy, and he catches it in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left. Rutgers is up 4 points and needs to make a stop to win this game. This is the kind of resistance they put up on a crucial first down. And
again, if you're listening to it and not watching it, the receiver is getting to the bottom of the P, and the nearest defensive in Purdue, and the nearest defensive back's on the R, just to give you an idea. I mean, in the middle of the R, holy cow. And I again, these things, I get it. You have a breakdown with 3 of them in the same game. It's just, that's bad against the bad offense. This game wouldn't have been close had they, avoided these mistakes. They keep happening, these mistakes. And it wasn't just that. I mean, I think on the first drive, you think, all right, here they come. Defense, Greg Shannon got involved. This is going to be there. I'm pretty sure they broke out a big 50-yard run too. I mean, just stuff didn't set contained. The same stuff that happened against Oregon, where you're like, oh, it's Oregon. They're really good. Well, no, it wasn't just that Oregon was really good. It was that defensive fundamentals continue to haunt this team. It's not just Jimmy's and Joe's, although that's a big reason for it, certainly. It's guys they're counting on to play at a high level, not doing the very basic things that are required for a good defensive football team. We continued to see it. So, again, you feel better about the defense because they did get some stops, but playing a bad opponent and having all of these, breakdowns still, it's hard to get too excited about it.
Yes. I don't know what the assignments were, but on that first 57-yard run, it looked like Cam Miller went the wrong way, and they had two defensive backs covering one receiver, which opened up a ton of space on the left. And then Jabomi got caught, went blocked, and then he couldn't make the tackle, which left acres of space for them to run into. And again, that was an issue. They gave up 4 plays that resulted in a total of 170 yards. So on 4 plays, Purdue had 107 yards. It's 42.5 yards per play, right? And that some of them didn't include the touchdowns where they are, again, completely open.
Yeah.
But understanding that those breakdowns are just going to happen. It's week 9. They're not going to fix that. They're not. It's just, let's not, because if you continue to elude yourself to thinking that this is the week they finally fix it, they're going to give up another 30-yard play to Illinois this week. It's inevitable. They are 4th nationally in giving up 30-plus yard plays. They've given up, I have the numbers here, 24 of them. They've given up 24 of them in 8 games. That's 3 per game. Only 3 teams give up more: Akron, Eastern Michigan, and Oklahoma State, who are a combined 6-20.
Right, exactly.
Oklahoma State, who gave up 69 to Oregon. But all that being said, if you take, and I know this is very silly to say, I hate when people say this, but I'm going to do it anyway. If you take out those 4 plays, Rutgers did pretty well. They gave up 175 yards on the other 42 plays, or 47 plays, I should say. That's 3.7 yards per play. They forced 5 punts. On the second drive, when Purdue gets into the red zone, they do stand tall and force a field goal, which it wins the game, right? Like those points, those are 4 points that if Purdue has, they win the game.
Right.
And there was some good there. Now, the 2 things apart from the big plays that give me pause that this defense is making any improvement is they got 0 sacks. They did not touch the quarterback against Purdue's offensive line. I mean, come on. And 2, they did not get an interception against the team that was averaging 1.5 interceptions per game against FBS opponents. I mean, those are 2 issues that have followed them all season. And if you're not fixing them against Purdue, you're not going to do it against Ohio State and Illinois. So the only way this defense is going to continue on this trajectory is to continue to nickel and dime and play well on plays where they don't give up huge plays, minimize the huge plays, and just pray that the opposing quarterback is dumb enough to not only get his pass deflected at the line of scrimmage, but continue to run after catching it and fumble it on the most important play of the game. If you keep getting lucky like that, then everything else doesn't matter. But
this is like a reviewer of Our American Cousin in 1865 saying, other than the incident in the balcony, this was a fine production. Do you know what happened in the balcony? Come on, tell me you know what happened in the balcony.
Other than the play, Mrs. Lincoln. No, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Yes. But again, we're grading them on a curve, right? Yes. So I think clearly there was improvement. I think clearly this was their best performance in the Big Ten. And I think clearly the fact those things are true is a very bad sign about this defense.
Not great. All right. So, and Illinois coming off a loss to Washington, no longer be ranked. We're certainly going to preview in our normal preview episode. But, certainly a step up in competition, even if they are not the team people thought they were. People thought they were a playoff contender. They're not. Still, there's 12.5 point spread for a reason in this game. They can't be like this. And you say, well, they're not going to fix it. Well, they're not going to beat Illinois. It's just kind of like, I don't see that. That's got to get fixed. It's got to. But all right,
this defense is not good. It's week 9. They're not good. They're one of the worst in the country, right? You're only Greg Schiano could put in every hour of every day for the next 6 days. He's not going to make this defense that much better. It's about minimizing the bleeding. And again, we'll preview Illinois when we preview Illinois, but they stink defensively as well. They are horrible defensively. Former Rutgers assistant Aaron Henry's unit is putrid, right? So this is going to be another game where you're going to have to outscore your opponent. But again, I'll talk about this when we preview the game. I give up predicting blowouts. I give up predicting Rutgers to win any game by I look back at my predictions this season. I feel like such an idiot. So I think
you got this one right. You got this one right.
Barely. I mean, barely, but
again, a win. What did we say at the beginning? A win's a win. I got it wrong. I thought Purdue was going to win based on all this stuff. I thought everything I thought was going to happen happened, except Purdue didn't win the game, essentially. So
So just to wrap up the Purdue game, just a couple quick notes. One, they gave up another long kickoff return at a really important part of the game.
Yeah.
They're just not kicking the ball through the end zone enough. They're not getting enough touchbacks, like 58%, which is 73rd in the country. I don't, they need to get a better kickoff guy because that's not enough. And you're, especially when you have so many guys on your return coverage unit banged up and out, you're playing that's another thing with injuries, but you're playing with so many reserves on that side. You're vulnerable to giving up these big returns, and that's going to kill them. It killed them against Iowa. It almost killed them against Purdue. Al-Shadi Salam getting hurt, not exactly a headliner because he was a reserve guy, but another guy on the return coverage units and another guy in the secondary that you're not going to be able to use, and you have to pull up some depth. Assuming, again, he's going to be out long-term, I'd be shocked. He was in a cast and carted off the field, which they carted him off the field. This is another weird thing. They carted him off the field, went to the opposing side of the field, and then at halftime, they carted him back to the Rutgers locker room. It was like they were doing like a halftime show of bringing the cart around, like giving him a tour of the stadium. It was very bizarre. I couldn't understand why they did that. Maybe they went to the wrong locker room and then realized it, and they couldn't go until the game was at halftime. And then Taj White, I think that's a sneaky, really rough injury if it's long-term because you're already down your top two left tackles. Now you got to shift over Tyler Needham to right tackle, which means Mashoud Giwa would be your starting left tackle, and he'd be your fourth starting left tackle. Or I should say fourth on the depth chart because Ryder Langsdale didn't play, but we were assuming he would start. So you're down to your fourth string guy, which, again, it's not the first time I bring this up. It really makes you appreciate Holland Pierce for his longevity because you didn't even think about that for 2 years. Right. And now it's a game of musical chairs because Rutgers has the misfortune of guys continually getting rolled up on. It did not look good for Taj White.
It's the second straight year where it seems like when Rutgers has an injury bug, it's at the same position. I mean, last year didn't have a tight end left in the program. Now it's happening at a more important position, and that's a big deal. Like I don't know what this offensive line doesn't have a lot of depth to begin with. It's going to be interesting to see if in a short week, if you can patch together to move these guys around and make it working, especially after a game where you gave up 5 sacks as it is. I mean, that's the biggest concern now, right? I shouldn't say that. That's certainly a big concern. You just spend 10 minutes talking about the defense, dumbass. It's certainly an enormous concern. Like if you're going to go into this game against Illinois, a team you say not playing well defensively, you're going to have to outscore them. You're going to have one of these games, you hope you get Ian Strong back. You have both those guys ready. You have a good running game. You already, things you can do. But if you can't protect Ethan, it's doesn't matter.
They've given up 3 sacks at least in every Big Ten game and Norfolk State. It's hard. It makes what they've done offensively kind of more impressive when you think about it, considering how often he's getting just hit, sacked, pressured.
The whole he's got to get rid of the ball quicker too. Let's say that there were a couple of covered sacks involved in there. A couple of times when he just held on to it too long.
No doubt. Well, that's part of, you live and die by the big play, right? To have a big play like KJ's 72-yard touchdown, you have to hold on to the ball and let it develop because, the guy's not the Flash. He can't run 70 yards in 2 seconds. So that's part of the thing. But to your point, when the pocket is collapsing, you can't. That's a calculated risk that I agree he took too long on a couple of sacks. So it's a fair point that we shouldn't malign the offensive line for all the issues. They were part of the problem. So was poor pass protection from the running backs who are not Kyle Monangai. Again, another thing you don't appreciate for Kyle Monangai until he's gone is how well he protected the quarterback. And then the other one is, Ethan. When he was pressured, he had average time to throw of 3.8 seconds, right? That's a long time to hold on to the ball.
Yeah. All right, let's do some questions from the Discord and from X. Thanks for chiming in and giving us some topics, funny topics. I like it. Brian Kelly. A lot of people want us to talk about Brian Kelly. You would think we'd be talking about it on Rutgers Pod, but because the people who are intimately familiar with Brian Kelly in President Bill Tate and Athletic Director Kelly Zinn from LSU got out of there before things, hard to say, went off the rails. It was a couple of top 10 games, and now you're writing a check for $50 million. But hey, that's big time college football. Brian Kelly out at LSU. People want to know, jokingly, I think, for the most part, does the LSU train to Rutgers continue? And my answer to that is, of course, no. But I would like to see him up here at a press conference, like talking like Paulie Walnuts, right? Wouldn't that be worth it? Would you sign for like a 6-year Brian Kelly complete utter failure just to see him get up here and go, hey, the pork roll thing, right? I got a tail of him right here. And just to see him like talk like that at a press conference, I certainly would. I would be all on board for that, just for that.
Oh, how you have that defensive breakdown over there?
Hey, we're recruiting Jersey players. Okay, I'm going to Bosco. I'm going to Bosco now. Hey, come on.
Oh, Fonseca, I thought you were a Paisan. Why are you pressing me on this loss, huh? It's just Purdue.
Come on, you guys.
I don't know why I sound like Andrew Cuomo.
Rutgers, what do you expect there? I got 2 bills on Rutgers.
I thought you were part of the family.
No, wait. You went. I was trying to do Paulie Walnuts. You seem to be going a little Joe Pesci. Either way, it's fine. I'm just telling you, you got to pick one or the other. You can't go back and forth with your Pesci.
Every time he answers a question, he just points out.
Oh, we're almost there. We're getting close to that, aren't we? We're going to talk about that soon.
I told you we'd get the big win, Brian. You were busting my balls all week. I told you we'd beat Purdue, Brian. Yes, that would be great. But no, Brian Kelly is not going to.
Where do you think he ends up, though? This is a good question. What do you think happens to Brian Kelly?
Someone will hire him. He's a coach that won 9 games every year for like a decade. He's coached at Notre Dame. He coached at LSU. I think things just got too toxic there. I mean, Texas A&M fans took over Death Valley, and the fans from LSU that stayed were chanting, "Fire Brian Kelly," right? And when you have a school where the governor is getting involved intimately in coaching decisions, it means more down there.
The governor helped hire this coach up here, by the way. Let's not forget that. Intimately involved in hiring Greg Schiano. So before we say, it's crazy, it only happens in Louisiana. Phil Murphy was pulling some strings behind the scenes and up here.
And apparently Chris Christie was pulling some strings behind the scenes to get Pat Hobbs hired too. So I understand your point. But
a lot of strings. Vote carefully. And November 2nd, folks. Okay.
But at LSU, every coach for the last 30 years has won at least one national championship between Jerry DiNardo and now Brian Kelly, which is pretty funny that they're not in the same sentence. But the guy has a high pedigree. And I think there's enough big jobs open now. LSU, Florida, Penn State. Has Auburn fired Hugh Freeze yet? I'm losing track here. If they haven't, they will fire him.
Yes.
Virginia Tech, big job. We can argue if it's a big job or not. But point being,
Florida State's going to open soon. If you even said that. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of jobs.
Florida State. Florida. I said Florida. Sorry. The point being, there's a lot of open jobs, and these schools will soon find out not a lot of great candidates out there.
Yeah.
Brian Kelly is going to be a top 2 or 3 guy, and he can probably accept a lower salary than usual because he has a $53 million buyout, right? Which they're negotiating, apparently. I don't know how you negotiate a buyout when you just fired a guy, but the point being, he will have options.
If you were president of a big time university, you had a choice between Brian Kelly and James Franklin. Which one are you hiring?
Wow, that's a great question.
It's a great question.
Well, James Franklin has won at 2 different leagues in 2 different scenarios, right? Between a downtrodden program in Vanderbilt and Penn State. He didn't win the big one. He won a lot of little ones. Brian Kelly has won at Notre Dame, and then he completely flopped in the SEC. I mean, he was swimming upstream the entire time he was in the SEC. So I guess I'd go Franklin. And Franklin's younger and has more juice, I think, on the recruiting trail. Kelly's
got
64.
more juice. Kelly, better coach? If you have
Maybe.
X and O one, does it matter?
At this point, probably not.
Kelly's won more big games than Franklin? No?
He's made it to 2 natties, and this was before the playoff, right? Where you had to essentially be perfect to make a natty.
Yes.
Where would you go?
My thing is, I think Franklin's a fraud. I know Kelly's a fraud, so I'm going to go Franklin. Absolutely. I just think he will bring juice, inject a little credibility into a program. Maybe, I don't know, but that is an interesting choice. And those, you're right. Like all these big jobs, there ain't some, there's not like there's a hot shot list of all these. Who's UCLA going to hire? Like there's not like this list, a long list of available candidates. It's a great question. The other part of this, like I still don't understand it. Like when is a program going to say, look, here's our replacement level coach. We have figured this out. Like Andrew Luck at Stanford or someplace where like we're gonna put our money toward the talent, and we're gonna hire a coach who he's got a very nice track record at Division I AAA something state, and he's X's and O guys, and we're gonna give him the best players ever, and we're not gonna play this game where we have to appease the alumni by hiring the bright shiny thing. Like we're just not gonna do that. I'd be very interested to see if a big time program were willing to do that, it'd be fascinating.
The Indiana model?
The Indiana model, exactly. It is the Indiana model, yes. But then Indiana said, "Well, we better give him $100 million just because. Like, we did this, we pulled this thing off. We got the Jim Madison coach, didn't get a job for 40 years, but now we're gonna make sure we're gonna pay him like he's the only coach in America who could possibly win here." Yeah, exactly.
To your point, though, Indiana is not LSU, right? You could sell that in Indiana because what else are they gonna do? Where they're gonna say, "What? We should have hired Brian Kelly." No one's gonna say that. Now, if you try to sell Kurt Cignetti before Indiana to LSU, that's going to be tough to get past the governor who's going to try to win the election in November for him to say, guys, vote for me. I got Kurt Cignetti from James Madison to Baton Rouge. Yes. So two different worlds. But I agree with you. I do think, though, that they might overcorrect and start looking for diamonds in the rough like Kurt Cignetti. And there are a lot more Chris Ashes than Kurt Cignettis, right? There are a lot more guys who aren't ready for the big time than those guys that have spent their entire lives preparing for this. So there will be a lot of fired ADs.
Someone who coaches at Cincinnati won at a certain level. I'm not talking about some hotshot coordinator. I'm talking about a guy with a track record of winning at a smaller time program.
So like a Summerall at Tulane or a Golish at USF, who they have a group of 5 teams ranked right now, and they've shown some success. I think the Summerall guy at Tulane is going to be a shoo-in because he's in New Orleans already, or in Louisiana already. And he's won and he recruited. But sometimes Billy Napier was a home run hire. He had Louisiana Monroe winning at an unprecedented level. He went to Florida with everyone thinking he'd be the guy to take them back to where they were with Urban Meyer. And then he completely flopped, right? So some of these things make a lot of sense on paper, but it's different in reality, So
yeah, you need to get like a proven Super Bowl winning coach and surround him with NFL guys like my alma mater did, and that works so perfectly. So there's no formula. There's no easy way of doing this here.
Giant asterisk. If your Super Bowl winning coach is 74 years old and his daughter is his girlfriend is about as young as every one of his players, probably not a good mix.
All right, another question. That was fun. Another question. Odds. People want to know, not to be a bummer looking ahead, but if you had to place the odds or percentages on Ian Strong going pro, transferring to a blue blood, or staying for his senior year, KJ Duff transferring, staying, Antoine Raymond transferring up or staying. All right, let's go through each one of them. Ian Strong, it's interesting. This dynamic's changed a little bit or has it after one game? I checked before the game. Ian Strong was like a 3rd rounder in some draft projections. It's hard to really project where a guy in that area is going to go. That those are combine players. There's a lot that has to happen there. I do wonder if missing a couple of games, of not having the big bold stats are going to hold Ian Strong back a little bit. It's kind of I don't know. If I would have thought before the season he was 85% gone, I'm lowering that number to 60.
The thing is, though, that now they have more options, right? Even if they don't go to the NFL draft, the next level is a high level blue blood throws a lot of money at them, right?
Right.
And it's not being a bummer because these conversations are happening in the Hale Center and in football headquarters around the country since August. These are just it's a reality of the sport. Yeah. So Ian Strong, I agree. He missed a couple of games, and the early season fervor he had has kind of cooled down. I still think that teams will look at his physical attributes, his size, his ability to get open. I think he'll do a decent job at the combine if he wanted to do that. I think it depends on the kind of grade he'll get from scouts at the end of the year. And I think that if he's going to leave, the NFL is most likely the route.
You think it's more likely than LSU? You think?
Well, let's say one of those schools offers him a humongous bag. Like Rutgers would have to look at its resources. It also depends on how much money Kelly's in gives Greg Schiano, right? But I think inarguably, right, KJ Duff and Ian Strong would be the 2 guys who have the highest priority in getting them to matching whatever other teams are getting them, right? And I think for those 2 guys, they're a bit unique in that they're from the area in Long Island. I think they really like being at Rutgers. I think they like playing in Straka's system. I think they're close to their families and they like to be around. I think that stuff matters to them compared to other people. But sometimes the money's so big that it's hard to combat that. I think it's too early to really tell, right? And I think none of what we're saying here is gospel. But if you're just telling me to guess, just recklessly speculate, I think it's more likely that he is not at Rutgers next year than he is at Rutgers. And if I have to decide between the routes, I would say the NFL is more likely than him transferring out to a bigger program. But I do think that if there's even any inkling of interest of him transferring, that he will get every program in the country, looking to get him.
If you could keep one of those two receivers, Strong or Duff, which one are you keeping? If you had the money and the resource, you could only pour it into one receiver because you needed to pour in. And I hope this conversation is happening because you needed to get a defensive lineman and a left tackle out of the portal. You can't have two, high six-figure receivers. Which one are you keeping?
It's a tough question, and I'm trying to battle against recency bias because it's hard not to say KJ Duff after what I just watched.
But recency bias, I mean, you saw something there from that kid. You really did. I don't know. It's tough.
There's a lot of positives with KJ Duff. His size, his youth, he has an extra year of eligibility, which I guess doesn't matter for this exercise because it's a 1-year deal every time. That's a good question. I don't think you can go wrong, to be honest. I just don't know which one right now I would pick because I think that there's, which this is a good thing for this year's team. There's not that much separation at this point, right?
Yes. I think if all things equal, I would take Strong, but the extra year of eligibility making me think, and you're right. Like you're betting on something that is, if KJ Duff has another year like this, he's going pro next year, right? But that would be a conversation you'd have. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if they can keep both. I think it's unlikely they would be able to keep both just because of what we're talking about here, resources. Kelly Zinn was very clear about this. The part of the thing they're doing to raise money is not just get money in the portal to bring players in. It is to retain their talent, and that she was clear about that. There's not going to be enough money to go around to keep all the shiny toys when you need some building blocks. So, I mean, it's going to be a very fascinating offseason for that.
I think seen with the defense that the priority should be retaining because you can't flip an entire roster. And if you don't hit on 2 or 3 or 4 spots, then the whole thing falls apart, right? So retention is infinitely more important for Rutgers as a program than recycling, cleaning, getting a bunch of guys in the portal. And again, just to wrap up the point, in an ideal world, and I still think it's the more likely scenario, Ian Strong goes to the NFL, he gets drafted in the top 3 rounds. It's good for him. It's good for Rutgers. And then they're able to pull all the resources they have in wide receiver to KJ Duff and make him the feature guy and then fill out the 2 spots behind him as they've done in the past. So that's the ideal scenario. I think it's the most likely, but you never know in this portal era.
Right. The problem with what you said a minute ago is like you want to use the money retaining players on defense. Based on what I see on defense, you need defensive tackles, defensive ends, linebackers, safeties, and cornerbacks. Other than that, you should have no problem retaining talent in the defense. All right.
And
Antoine Raymond.
Coaches, depending on certain positions, that's another whole other money you have to spend. Different pot, but more money to spend because as much as you're going to have to change a lot on the field, I think there's no doubt there's going to be multiple changes on the defensive staff, right? That you just can't go into another season with what just happened and retain most of the guys.
I think Antoine Raymond, this is a tough one. This is another tough one because I want to say that obviously he's going to get all these carries. He's a young guy. He'll stay, but I wonder if there's going to be some money ball decisions made here on different positions. And if you're discussing what we're discussing here and Rutgers needs these premier positions that cost a lot of money in the portal, do you pay a running back, a very good running back, or do you look on your depth chart and see Jayshon Benjamin and see young guys coming up through the program where you're like, all right, let's do what the Giants did because that works so well. And let's not pay a running back and let's focus on other positions of where it's harder to get guys. That's a fascinating decision. I think again, more likely than not that he's on the roster next year, but that's my butt there with Raymond.
Right. And not to like look into just looking generally, right? Like we're having NFL front office conversations with this kind of stuff. And it's hard because you have to understand, we don't know how much money they have. That always makes this more difficult, but they're sitting in the Hale Center thinking, okay, we have this much money. We want to allocate this much money for this position, for this guy. We risk losing this guy and having to find a replacement. Do we have enough guys in the program with depth that if this guy does transfer, this guy can come up and we don't have to go searching for a solution in the portal? Are there solutions in the portal that fit our price range? It's just so much calculus that these guys have to do. It's an inexact science. So it's hard. It's hard to know what the right thing is though. But if you're going to look at positional value, right? Like what positions are the most important that you have to pour most of your resources in, running back has to be near the bottom. You mentioned the Giants. Yes, they faltered without Saquon Barkley. Then they just found a guy in Cam Skatibo who, until his leg, combusted yesterday, was looking pretty damn good, right? So I think it's easier to find a replacement running back than it is to find a replacement edge rusher or defensive tackle, which Rutgers at tackle, they might be fine with Doug Blue Eli coming back. At edge, they really need to get depth. Not only elite starters, they need to get depth. The entire defense is going to be, I think, and should be the focus of the portal. And I think retaining the offensive guys will be. But then you have to fill in your entire interior offensive line. There are so many positions Rutgers has to fill this offseason, which is pretty daunting the more we talk about it.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So that's a good exercise that we'll have, literally 8 months to discuss, but it's going to be an interesting offseason to figure that out. And those conversations are happening now as we speak.
The interesting thing is going to be the portal window is now in January, right? So there's going to be, unless Rutgers makes it to a bowl, or even if they do make it to a bowl, there will be a long time between the end of the season and when guys go into the portal, which could be beneficial because you're having conversations. You'll have a general idea of not only who on your team is probably going to go in the portal, but who on other teams is going to go in the portal. So my guess is that when the portal window opens, things will happen a lot faster because everyone will have a month essentially to collect their data and make their decisions and allocate their resources and all that stuff. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. And we'll have a month to discuss all this baselessly until the portal actually opens.
Right. Yes. And then we can see exactly what people are paying for players. And I think there'll be some shock and awe at some decisions that are made. All right. We had some questions about refereeing. People are very angry, maybe rightfully so. And this is like my entire weekend was looking at tweets like this because of the way the Giants lost the game against the Eagles. There are a couple of legitimately bad calls. There are a couple of questionable calls in the Rutgers game. I think people were most angry about the punt that was a fumble punt that turned out interfering with the kicker, which shouldn't have been. Mike Pereira said it right away. It shouldn't have been a call. This is a question from JP. With all the terrible calls by referees and umpires in the sport, should there be a financial penalties for egregiously incorrect calls? That would cost some people. There'd be some bankrupt umps pretty quickly. I don't know if that's feasible, but it's tough. Yeah, I mean, it's just part of the game. But it seems like in some instances lately, it's you would think they'd get better at this.
Financially penalizing someone for being incompetent or missing something up at work is a slippery slope that I do not want to go down personally. These guys are under so much pressure with millions of people watching on TV, home crowds killing them in the stadium. You want them to have to make a split-second 50-50 decision on stuff that sometimes really is borderline, knowing that if they mess this up, they're losing $5,000 when it's not like they're getting paid $7 million a game, right? That's not nothing. I don't think more punitive action is going to be something that fixes this because I don't think referees are messing up calls because they feel like it, right? I don't think the ref saw that kick catch interference and was like, all right, I don't really think it was a penalty, but I'm going to throw it anyway just to mess up Rutgers' day, right? So I think it was a bad call. I understand because the Rutgers guy was in somewhat of the vicinity and in theory, right, he did interfere with the guy catching the ball. Not directly, right? He didn't physically stop him, but he was there. Again, I didn't think it was a great call. I don't think it was an egregious call.
Agree totally. Yep. That's a different thing. That's a different thing for me. It wasn't probably the wrong call, but it wasn't like, some calls we see where you're just like, are you out of your mind with that? And I thought that with the pass interference in the Giants game, Darius Slade, just like they're having hand-to-hand combat. He breaks free and catches an 80-yard pass, how long it was, touchdown pass, and they're calling pass interference and that completely changed the game. That stuff, you're like, that's egregious to me.
That was a kick in the nuts, that play, because Al-Shadi Salam got hurt for nothing, right? They recovered the ball and then they don't get it back. They get penalized and they lose a guy with a serious injury. And two, really quickly on penalties, Purdue did not get penalized once.
Really?
I think that probably stuck in Rutgers' craw more so than that call because it's hard to go an entire college football game and not commit one penalty.
Right. All right. Last question. Our friends at the RU Screw podcast, which do they even record a podcast anymore?
Not anymore, unfortunately. Though they were one of my favorite listens in the rotation, but life gets in the way.
What is Greg Shanna's record in games following a scathing Politi column? I think that's very funny. I don't know that there's any correlation between a Rutgers win and me going rip shit on Greg. But that'd be great. With someone, there's just some data on that. And what counts as a really scathing? What counts as a scathing politicom, or what's just a normal level of fire? I don't know.
It's a good question. But the last two in my mind are the one you wrote last week, and then they come out and they don't beat Purdue in this fiery effort, but they win a game they have to win. Fairness to them. And then last year, when just shredded the guy, rightfully so, after somehow losing that Illinois game, they came out the next week and they just destroyed Michigan State. They treated Michigan State like all the guys were wearing a Politi cutout on their faces, and they wanted to take out all their aggression because they just beat the piss out of them. So I guess the last two in my memory is Greg Schiano must have a tackling dummy with your face on it in the Hale Center during that week, because they come out firing after that.
All I gotta say is you're welcome. All right. They don't have to thank me. It's fine. If that's what it takes, I'm your guy here. Okay. I'm like the Brian Kelly. I can do it. That's good. Very funny. And that's why I'm setting them up. I'm only scathing before playing, a patsy here. I'm not scared. If I go rip shit against before they play Ohio State, I don't think it's going to matter.
You have to write that week that Rutgers must beat Ohio State and just get them all riled up. Maybe it'll work.
Yeah, maybe it'll work. Give that a shot. All right. But what else? We've got some sad news. Women's soccer ends its streak of 13 straight NCAA tournaments. Wow. I mean,
12 or 13.
First of all,
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, let's give a round of applause, because that is a pretty incredible run of success for Michael Neal and his team. Took a step back this year. I don't pretend to know what happened. But for a high level of success for a long period of time, there's a couple of college cups in there. I think there's an Olympian. They've had high level players. I think that's the model for Rutgers athletics, and it's a shame that it ended, but it doesn't diminish what he's done there.
You said this before. If there's any coach at Rutgers that deserves a down year, it's Mike O'Neill, for the consistency of excellence he's had in this program. Now, that being said, you really have to hope this is a blip in the radar and not a sign of things to come. If they miss the NCAA tournament again next year and they don't show progress, that's not great. Right now, just like you, I'm not going to pretend to know. I didn't watch every game. The results speak for themselves. As long as it's just one bad year, bad recruiting or whatever it is, that's fine. It's acceptable as long as you get back to the NCAA tournament within the next couple of years. But the other teams in the program, in the school, are picking up slack. Field hockey's having a decent year. It looks like they're going to make the Big Ten tournament, and they're going to have a chance to earn their way to the NCAA tournament. Men's soccer's upward trajectory has kind of sputtered a little bit, but they're in line still to make the Big Ten tournament and can still, I think, I don't know this for a fact. I should have done better research. I think they're still in contention for the NCAA tournament, right? Which is better than what they've been in the past. So listen, if one team is going to have a bad year, it's good that other teams pick up the slack.
All right. And the other big Rutgers news, if you're following the NBA and you're up late at night, Dylan Harper. Wow. What were the numbers again?
So Dylan Harper yesterday against Brooklyn, he scored 20 points on 8 of 11 shooting. He had 6 rebounds, 8 assists, 0 turnovers, and 2 steals.
Wow.
In his second NBA game, second or third.
Second NBA game. That's amazing.
He looks pretty good. And it's just, I hate to keep saying this. This is exactly what I thought was going to happen when I looked at these guys in the NBA. And my first thought when I read that stat line back was like, oh my God, this guy played at Rutgers and they didn't sniff the NCAA tournament. It doesn't make sense. It is more shocking now than it was when it happened, because I've had time to kind of, pull back. I've done other things. I've thought about other things, and I wasn't fully focused on Rutgers basketball as I was in February and March last year during that frenzy. And now you watch Dylan Harper dribble past NBA defenders, finish at the rim against NBA centers, steal the ball from NBA guards, throw lobs to Wembanyama, and you think, oh my God.
Right. And meanwhile,
now, Wembanyama was on Rutgers last year. They would make the tournament, but that's a whole other thing.
Right. Meanwhile, Ace Bailey on the other side has apparently touch of the flu, is 0 for 5 from the field, left the game with 13 points in his last, 0 points in 13 minutes. Sluggish was the word people in Utah using to describe him, kind of off to the opposite start.
He had the flu. He missed the first game of last year too with an injury. So maybe he's just kind of a slow starter that'll work his way up.
Yeah, right.
Also, Dylan is in a better situation. The Spurs have a lot of talent around him. Ace is not quite in that in Utah. So I think that plays a part in it as well.
Indeed. All right, let's stop there. We'll be back later in the week to preview the Illinois game. Hopefully have a special guest to help us pick it. Fun. Winning program. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant, sponsored by the Heldridge Hotel. Head to NJ.com/Rutgers for more Scarlet Knight content.